Hello and welcome to Valuechain News. I am Naomi Oleribe. First, the headlines. Oil and gas industry reforms will revitalize Nigeria's economy. Alakija. Private refineries owners yearn for crude oil supply. Rivers floors Imo at Supreme Court over disputed 17 oil wells. And now, the news in detail. Africa's richest woman and vice chairman of Famfa Oil Limited, Mrs. Folorunsho Alakija, has stated that current reforms in the oil and gas sector are expected to have a far-reaching impact on revitalizing the Nigerian economy. Alakija also stated that the 650,000 barrels per day Dangote refinery currently under construction, expected to come on stream before first quarter next year, would also contribute a great deal in transforming the country's economy. The Famfa Oil Vice President made the disclosure while speaking as a guest in a recent interview with CNN, in which she equally discussed issues around climate change, the African economy, and how Nigeria can diversify its economy and focus on other areas that are safer for the environment. She pointed out that as part of the structural adjustments to ramp up the nation's oil production, the government had introduced reforms, the marginal field bid rounds, the Petroleum Industry Act (PIA), and the transformation of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company (NNPC) into a limited liability company. She said, in view of the last marginal field bid rounds, which was as a result of international oil companies (IOCs) divesting from some of their assets in the country, the industry now has more indigenous players that would help the growth of the economy. Lakija expressed optimism that the Dangote Petroleum Refinery would bring a positive change in the downstream sector by helping to eradicate subsidy and boost the nation's refining capacity when operational. Following the failure of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company (NNPC) Limited to supply crude oil for local refining, a number of small-scale refineries operating in Nigeria are facing huge operational challenges. Several operators with far-reaching investments in the sector are irked by NNPC's ability to provide crude oil for their operations. At the recent launch of Watersmith Refinery, Kyari was quoted as promising that the NNPC would collaborate with relevant entities to provide the few modular assets operating in the country with all the necessary support they need to operate and achieve their growth plans. We will work closely with them to ensure that they get enough crude feedstock that they need to operate seamlessly, the NNPC boss had said. The Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Rivers State over the disputed 17 oil wells with Imo State. In its verdict delivered earlier today, the court decided that the oil wells located in Ndoni and Egbema communities belong to Rivers. Joseph Daudu, counsel to the Rivers State government, had earlier prayed the court to give judgment in favor of the state on the grounds that historical evidence from 1927 to date clearly indicates that the oil wells belong to the state. He also disagreed with the Attorney General of the Federation's contention that the dispute should have been heard in a federal high court rather than the Supreme Court because locals should have testified orally in the matter. According to Daudu, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction and may easily examine all accessible historical documents dating back to the colonial era to identify which state owns the oil wells. There was previously a political arrangement put in place by the Nigerian government for the revenues from the disputed wells to be shared equally between the two states. However, when Emeka Ihedioha became the governor in 2019, a presidential memo directed that all revenues should go to Imo. The Rivers State government swiftly filed a suit against the presidential directive. Libya's National Oil Corporation (NOC) has hinted on Wednesday that the Zuweitina oil port received the first oil tanker, Melos 21, after the force majeure was temporarily lifted by the NOC, adding that the shipment headed to China. A source close to NOC revealed that another tanker will enter the shipping area in Zuweitina on Thursday morning and will ship 600,000 barrels to Italy. Libya's NOC lifted force majeure on the port at the beginning of the week after reaching an agreement with protesters who had halted export operations in mid-April, calling on the unity government to distribute oil revenues in a fair manner and not to waste public money. The NOC had previously warned of an environmental disaster due to the suspension of export operations from the Zuweitina port because of the deterioration of the infrastructure of pipelines and storage tanks. Germany should start conserving gas now to replenish storage levels well ahead of winter and avoid rationing caused by any sharp reduction or stoppage in supplies from Russia, industry lobby VIC said on Friday. There is an urgent need to reduce natural gas consumption immediately in order to conserve reserves and achieve the goal of the highest possible storage levels in autumn 2022, it said in a statement. It called for all possible substitutes for natural gas in power generation but did not specify any energy source. Germany, which sourced 55% of its gas from Russia last year, is struggling to wean off its dependence in line with EU efforts to punish the Kremlin for the invasion of Ukraine. The German government has put on hold the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline linking to Russia, even though it was completed last September. The Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) has directed banks to implement enhanced measures on existing accounts and transactions related to Benin Republic. It said the directive was based on intelligence reports from competent sources that the Benin Republic is becoming a hub for illicit drug trade in West Africa to prevent Nigerian banks from being used as conduits for the movement of dirty money. CBN has instructed the banks to strengthen their Know Your Customer (KYC) and customer due diligence (CDD) policies. Speaking on Thursday, Director of Corporate Communications (CBN) Osta Wanisiobi said the measures became necessary to strengthen Nigeria's anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism framework. Before we end the news, here's a recap of our headlines. Oil and gas industry reforms will revitalize Nigeria's economy. Alakija. Private refineries owners yearn for crude oil supply. Rivers floors Imo at Supreme Court over disputed 17 oil wells. And that's the news. I am Naomi Olewibi. Good evening.